Hello, in this video I'm going to react to a couple of videos that I've watched on BookTube. It's not what I normally do, but as usual I'm going to do it as a single take, so how this will work I'm not sure. The first video I'm going to react to was a video by Paul at Geeks Love Dogs, which talked about viewer preferences between book hauls and book reviews, and I felt I wanted to react. Now, just to set out my position, I've been a reader for nearly 60 years. I've been a collector for 50 plus years, and these days I consider myself more of a collector than a reader, partly perhaps due to eyesight getting worse as I get older. Just to put you in the picture, when I first started I was a reader of perhaps the first 2,000 books that I collected. I'd read 1,500 at that time. By the time I got to 3,000 books in my collection, I'd probably read 2/3 and so on. And gradually collecting became my main interest. So I've probably got around 16,000 titles in my collection, of which I reckon I've read about 4,000. So that's my position. And because I'm a collector, and if I have a choice, I prefer vintage collectibles, paperbacks, but I do collect other things. My preference is for book hauls, because if you're a collector, you can't build up a collection without doing hauls. I do occasionally watch the book reviews. I rarely allow them to push me onto reading a particular book, but it sort of soaks in and percolates, and when I'm looking for a new book to read, then I suspect what I've watched over the months does have an influence. Now, reacting to the video, I'm going to quote from a comment on a video he'd made earlier, where he got many of his comments about hauls versus reviews. And I'm going to read a section. My apology if it's slightly out of context. The woman wrote, "I think a lot of booktubers actually don't read. They have larger shelves full of books with no broken spines collecting dust, because they just like the thought of everyone thinking they read hundreds of books, when in reality they probably look at the blurb and then just say, 'Yay, I enjoyed it, it was good,' but never go into the details of why they liked the book. I hate people that do book hauls as well. They never do reviews of those books, and it's like 10 or 20 books you just know is going to sit on their shelf like pretty bricks until they get thrown out." Now, that was taken out of context. It was a much longer post, and to an extent I think she was referring to modern booktubers, influencers, reviewers, those who run a channel to make money and are basically talking about new books. For me, I've, as far as possible, tried to collect vintage books, but if there aren't vintage books, then I may collect modern versions. And another point about my collecting, these days in London there are new bookshops which I rarely use. I tend to use charity shops, or if you like, the equivalent would be thrift shops in America. And I look on my collecting as rescuing or saving these books from destruction. Now, I did a video about charity shops, and I've seen what happens to books that aren't in favour. They tend to be piled up, sent off to book warehouses, who perhaps sort out 10 or 20% to put online and sell, and the rest probably just get pulped. So to me, buying books and saving them, it's something I want to do, and I get pleasure from having a big library. I know there's always a chance if someone says something about a book that I want to follow up, there's a reasonable chance I will have it. But obviously even 14 or 15,000 titles is far less than the total number of books circulated. So my preference is for book hauls and many other, but there are many other types of videos that will appeal to both collectors and perhaps to a lesser extent the readers. So you get shelf reviews. Maybe that's something that person hated. You get things like videos about book repair or cleaning, tidying, storing, protecting books. In my view, educational. You get books about the history, that includes a bit about the author and things like that. You get ranking videos, the 10 best books I read in the month, the 10 best books of the year, and so on and so forth. Many, many varieties of ranking. And there are many other types which will appeal to varying extents to both groups of people. And to be honest, there are good and bad videos in both. I mean, I have certain preferences in terms of how book hauls are done. Maybe I don't do mine very well, so by all means comment if you want. And there are ways I like book reviews to be done. And when they're put into a historical context, when there's a bit of information about the author, I enjoy that. So I would also, rather than looking at this subject being hauls versus reviews, to some extent it's collectors versus readers, another way of looking on that. And I don't see anything wrong with being a collector, especially of vintage books. As I say, I look on it preserving something. It's not consumerism. We're not supporting the mass of current books that book reviewers are trying to push or explain. And yes, I accept there are collectors who are different. People who want curated bookshelves. It's a term I've frequently heard. So those are my views on that. And I've explained my position. So I will continue doing book hauls. And can I say, I don't feel doing reviews is my forte. And I've said this on one or two videos. I still remember days at school doing English literature and having to analyse books and say why they were good, how they fitted in, and the thinking of the author as he was writing it. It was not something I enjoyed doing. So, if you like, I have a preference for what I call a good story. What else do I like? World building. Good characters that I feel I can relate to or believe in. And there are areas which I don't particularly like. Be it romance and all the rest. I do like a bit of variety. And I'll come on to that in my next section. The next video I'm going to talk about is one from Alison at Alison Likes Books. It's a channel I've been impressed with, and she did a video about genre fatigue. And I thought both the channel and the comments were worth looking at and reading. Now, my genre is SF. It's always been my priority, but I have read a bit more widely. I must admit, not hugely widely. When I first started reading, one of the things that I got as a teenager, young teenager, was a subscription to Reader's Digest condensed books. And I was a member for about 10 years. It was a present at Christmas from a relative. And I read a wide range of books from many genres that I probably would never touch today. And that was both fiction and non-fiction. And thanks to that, I probably read more widely than I have ever since. I enjoyed it. The fact that the books were condensed might be an issue to some people, but I thought by and large they captured the essence. And there was one book, so basically it was one book a month with 4 condensed stories inside, usually a mix. And so over 10 years, I've probably read a condensed version of 400 or 500 books, or perhaps only 30 or 40 I might otherwise have tackled. I did see some comments about how different genres can be poles apart, so to speak. There was one comment saying SF was at one corner of the booktube spectrum and literary fiction or at another corner. Another comment was that romance is probably least favoured by people who like science fiction. Again, while I basically concentrate or prefer science fiction, I do read fantasy. I do read some young adult, and I think they are well worth the read on many occasions. And I like some cross-genre, where you have a detective or a mystery built in with the science fiction. I think cross-genre are well worth the read. I must admit, I've never particularly liked, I don't object to romance in SF, but I don't like it when it comes to dominate. I still remember I read one young adult book where basically the whole book was about 2 people who were forced to travel together across a strange planet, and basically the strange planet was just the scenery. The whole story was about how the 2 people reacted to each other and eventually fell for each other. So a familiar trope, and to me it sort of spoilt it. And oddly enough, I thought after that I wanted something different, so I thought I would try, is it a Richard Galbraith? The J.K. Rowling pseudonym. I thought I'd try one of her books. And in the first chapter, these 2 people liked each other but couldn't tell each other about it. And so I went to the very end of the book. And the last page, I thought, the whole book's like this, I don't want to know. And virtually on the last page, she left the room regretting she hadn't told him. So I'm afraid I didn't even try and read that book. It was about 800 or 1,000 pages. I can see it now. And I suspect it's going to be a remainder donated to a charity shop somewhere. But again, talking about collecting, if I just go back, over the years, I say I've read 4,000 books and I've built up a collection of 16,000. I don't think I have ever got rid of a book from that collection unless I've either upgraded it or found a different edition that I wanted to keep. I've still got every book that I collected. And yes, that causes me tremendous space problems, as those who've looked at my book room tour will know, and it gets worse every time I go out and do another collection. So, going back to the thing, genre fatigue, there was a bit of talk about, you know, there are familiar tropes, there are only so many stories. Yes, you can vary the characters, you can vary the location, you can vary elements, but there is talk, there is a lot of repetition, that the books are formulaic. Now, fantasy has more of that reputation than perhaps science fiction. I've seen sort of talks about science fiction that say, after Tolkien, who said didn't write The Lord of the Rings as fantasy, but more as world building, setting up a separate mythology, there was a series of books by Terry Brooks, and basically they were a roaring success. And I've read the Terry Brooks books and I enjoyed them, but it created a formulaic approach that writers since have followed. Maybe David Eddings would be another one who you would say follow the formulaic approach, and there are many others. And as things have progressed and as we moved on to romantasy, again the formulas appear, and there's the issue of the quality of writing. What has happened to editing? Have editors disappeared? Don't they go for novelty? Don't they go for fresh ideas? That's not to say a fresh idea is always a good thing. The quality of writing is important. But I do think there is a degree of genre fatigue. And to be honest, I almost feel I'm starting to get genre fatigue in terms of collecting and collecting vintage books. Certainly in London, it's now extremely difficult to find anything. It's not like America, where you go to small town America and there are hundreds of bookshops all over the place that have massive stocks of books. In London, and I suspect other big cities, perhaps like New York, the costs of running a shop become horrendous in terms of the amounts you can charge for books, especially used books. So I feel I'm suffering almost from genre fatigue on my collecting habit. Will I get rid of my books? I very much doubt it. Will I stop collecting? Maybe, because all I tend to find these days are modern books. I tend to find hardbacks rather than paperbacks, which are much worse in terms of storage space. So I've reacted to 2 videos in this video. It's not what I normally do. By all means, comment. I will say one other thing. I think sometime in the current week, when I'm recording this, my channel will be 1 year old. I did already prepare an anniversary video, which I'll probably put on Make Live next week. So I hope you enjoyed. By all means, comment. And I think I'll just pause to see if I can think of anything else to say. Finally, I'm going to say something about the community on BookTube. There is a community it is slightly splintered. The creators do have different priorities in what they do. Some people perhaps many of the contributors hope to find a community in which they feel they fit in. And again, I would say perhaps that's a bit like my collecting habit. I enjoy going out and collecting. I do chat to the shop staff when there's a chance, the people who do the book sorting and things like that. And again, on these videos, I welcome comments from those who are like-minded. So the community aspect is important, and given my age, the other important thing is if I go out book hunting, it means quite a bit of travelling around, a lot of walking, which hopefully keeps me fit and active, and perhaps doesn't keep the weight off as much as it should, but at least I feel I'm keeping active. I will leave links to the 2 videos I've mentioned. I think they are both of interest. I did quite enjoy them. And I think that is all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.